and then
That's like horrifying. That's the move.
Alright, for number 1, was this slope positive, negative, 0, or undefined? Positive.
I was right there too, honestly. Ooh.
We also have to calculate this. 8 over 3.
Oh, I didn't even do that.
So 8 over 3 was correct. For number 2, are these two lines parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Not parallel. They are not. They are perpendicular. They're perpendicular because these numbers are switched or flipped, and then one is negative.
Parallel is the same slope.
Yeah. So for parallel lines, they're the same slope, but the line intercept is different. For number 3, we needed to solve this to determine if it had one, none, or infinitely many. As you started to distribute, you would get 2x plus 12 and 6x plus 8. From this, you should be able to determine if this is one, none, or infinitely many. From this, which would it be? 1. Because your coefficients are not the same. But if you continued, you would get, I think, a fraction.
You get 1.
Okay, or a whole number. Something that's not the other two.
I got negative 1.
I got 1.
Whatever the actual number was, you got one solution, and that's fine.
It doesn't matter as long as
If it said what is the solution, that'd be different.
It's infinitely many if it equals 0.
If you solve it completely and it's 0 equals 0, or the same number equals the same number. Or if your coefficients are the same and your constants are the same. Okay, on the back. For number 4, the easiest way to go about this is to start at this point, 3, negative 3. And if it's perpendicular, what would our slope be? Negative 4 over 3. So I'm going to use that slope from this point and find my line-intercept. So if I go up 4 and to the left 3, I end up at positive 1. So my equation would be y equals negative 4 over 3x plus 1. For number 5, we need to graph this inequality. So we would need to first solve this. Subtract 2x on both sides. Divide everything by negative 2. Our sign would change direction. Guys, focus. So our y-intercept would be at negative 3, and our slope would be 1. This would be a dash or a solid line.
Yeah.
Either above or below. Don't stop. So below would be underneath this, everything here. Alright, before we continue going through the SOL packet, I just want to show you one thing because I don't think I did this last class. If you have not done this Khan Academy already, guys, listen! There's way too many people talking. If you have not done this Khan Academy yet, this will help you do this. So one of your Khan Academies that we'll do on Friday was the one on literal equations. There are two different ways you may see these problems. I'm gonna rewrite it. So this says n.
She tried.
This might go.
She tried.
If you haven't done this already, you should probably be paying attention. For this, if we're trying to solve this for x, we need to first distribute, even though that would create something next to x, it'll help us here in the long run. So 17n plus nx equals 34x minus r. And then what we want to do is get all of the x's on the same side and everything else on the opposite side. It does not matter the order. So I could move 34x over and get rid of 17n.
I'm not sure, but why is there 43 pages in this
I'm doing them both at the same time. So if I do that, these cancel, I have nx minus 34n. I'm sorry. X equals negative r minus 17n. So now I have my x's on the same side, but they're not combined. So what I could do is factor out an x out of both of these, since there is an x in both. If I divide x out of both of these, what would be left? And minus 34. And then how would I get x by itself from here? Divide both sides by this n over, or n minus 34. So our final answer, I'm going to rewrite this now. X equals negative r minus 17n over n minus 34. And you see that there are different variations of this. So you'll get some problems that look like this where you have to distribute and then move things. You may also have some where it's already in that distributed format, so it's like already here, and you just have to move things. So if you've not done that one yet, make sure you go back and do that one, as well as the other three that were due on Friday on direct and inverse variation. Everyone at the back table who doesn't sit there and have 2 seats.
It's really writing.
That's not a good
Find this page.
He doesn't even know.
You have one. If you have your computer up, you can open up Desmos, but you shouldn't be working on other things. It looks like this. You guys can start writing this down. So on the simplifying radicals page, if you have a multiple choice question, you can use the Desmos Hack. So that's putting all of the problem in with capital letters, making them sliders, and then changing those values to see which one matches.
Are we left hands? Can we keep that all up now?
Oh, wow.
Wait, what?
This is for practice. So that you can go home and practice, and then do all the other.
Why do you think you're allowed to have this during the SOL? Because it's a hack. It's not hack.
There are,
How?
you have to be able to know these things, that's why we're going through them. If you get two answers that match, make sure that whichever one you choose is the more simplified one, because it will do that. For Desmos, instead of actually clicking the square root button or going and finding the nth root button and putting in 3, you can just type in these two and it'll form the square root or cube root. If you type in SQRT or CBRT, you will get the cube root or square root. It's the root symbol. Michaela, you said you wanted to see the Desmos Hack 1 through 4. Which one would you like to see? 3. Is anyone still writing this down?
Oh, is this it?
Yes. I cannot hear the question. Say that again. If you capitalize it. I'm going to show that in a second. Yes. SQRT and CBRT. When we get to that page, ask it again.
What would like make it define?
There's way too much talking going on right now. That's all, it's in 2 days. Everyone should be in now.
It's Wednesday. But we have class on Wednesday, right?
Yes.
Okay, man.
Wait, so you can review us before the test.
We were gonna do some last minute review, yes.
Is a test in the afternoon?
It's at 11 or 11.
This thing we love. This thing is like cool.
I'm not sure how you realize it's gonna be me. I'm not understanding. You can go to A lunch if you don't want to go to B lunch. I mean, that's how we kind of got into it. It's started off big. Right, you really? Well, so enthusiastic there. Like, you this?
Like, there's one more left. Yeah, that's bad. Didn't you say some variables in there?
Right, so for number 3,
Wait, so
loading, make sure you're paying attention. If we put this in with capital variables, it will be our sliders, which if you didn't see that, I put all of this in and it had E, F, G, all. I clicked all and these popped up. And then I changed these to random numbers. It doesn't matter what you make them. Oops, I forgot. No, they can't be negative for your square root, but they could be anything else. And then whatever number you get, you start putting in your answer choices, and one is going to match. Either 1 or 2 are going to match. If 2 match, look for the more simplified one. I just put in the actual answer. So this one would be your answer for that one.
So most of the things I guess is just like you use the slider.
Hold on 1 second, because there are more talking going on. Say that one more time.
So mostly yes, so you can just like put the actual equation, do the slider thing, and then put in all the the answers.
If it's multiple choice, yes, a lot of those will work that way. If it's not multiple choice, so let's say it asks you to write or type in the simplified brackets, what you get, you could put this back in and see if it matches with the variables. I mean, as long as for square roots they're not negative. Anything. I could if I change this to 10, let's say I make them all 10. Because this number still matches this one. Yes. I don't know the actual answer to that. 40, 50, maybe.
It's usually less.
It's less than the other ones, yeah.
Thank God, because it's taking a millennium trying to figure out one question.
Did we want to see any others on this page, 5 through 7, or the other ones that we didn't go over?
Why do you have to type in SQRT for this?
Don't have to. You could use this for one.
Okay.
But if you don't want to type, if you don't want to put that, you could type it in also.
Like, if you were to come in on the day of the final, aren't the finals the last week of school? Like, what would we even do in the class? Aren't the finals going to be in the class, or are they going to be the last week?
So, for students not taking finals that show up on final day, there'd be somewhere else for you to go.
Okay.
Oh, so y'all actually kick us out the class?
That depends on who has majority of students. I mean, I'm taking for you guys, it's going to be different. Since this question was asked, and I forgot that I was going to say this anyway. For you guys, the last day I'm going to be after school is the 7th of June. And that'll be the last day to turn in retakes after school. But the days that we're doing final exam review, if you're not taking the final exam, you could be working on retake work those days. But the last day I see you is the last time you can turn in retake work, do retakes, missing work, and stuff like that. What? So for you guys, your last day is, for me, last day in class, like last day of actual class is the 10th. I can. Those are all final exam days.
Wait.
So the last official day of class is June 10th. Every day after that is final exam day.
Why don't they just make it to where she works out and put that in?
I don't know. Lily?
I'm not going to be here for the last 3 days of school.
Like the 14th, 15th?
Like the last 3 days, so.
Like the 13th, 14th, 15th?
Yeah.
So that means if you have to take a final, you may be missing those and it'll affect your grade.
What?
If you have to take a final for any of those classes and you miss it, it will affect your grade.
I can't skip the cruise.
There are makeups and retakes, yes. Peter.
So the only way to take finals for that is either if you have a B under an A, or is it if you fail the SOL?
Guys, listen, because you may have this question later. So the way you could possibly take the final is, 1, you failed the SOL, so you have to take it. 2, you want to take it to bring up your grades, to use it as retakes. Either of them. Senna.
If you don't fail the SOL but you do poorly, can you still retake it?
Do poorly on the SOL.
Yeah, like you want a higher score, but you didn't fail.
So if you didn't fail the SOL, whatever score you get is going to be your SOL score. You don't retake the SOL unless you failed it.
Can you retake the final?
Vita.
It's a final.
If you pass the SOL this year, you know how you don't want to take it next year or anything. Can you like take it if you want to?
They won't let you. So if you pass the SOL this year, you won't be on the roster to take the geometry SOL at all.
Wait, so we don't have to take the geometry also?
If you pass the algebra one.
So we start
You
taking.
only need one that SOL credit.
That's great. That's amazing. I hate math.
Okay. Any other SOL final questions?
Wait,
Schedule questions, anything?
next year, do we have to be taking the final?
Yes.
You're joking.
So just in case it wasn't clear, if you pass your SOL this year and you don't have to take your SOL next year, you're taking the final next year. Unless you have an A.
Unless you have an A.
Unless you have an A for the year.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
You have to take the finals for the rest of the year, for the rest of high school.
Unless you get it.
Because there's no SOL, so you just need to get A in all your classes.
Guys, listen. One more time. Say that one more time.
When's the final?
Second period's final is Tuesday, the 14th of June.
That's like. I better pass this so I don't want to be here.
Any other schedule, final exam questions? Guys, listen. Stop talking. I cannot tell you not to come to school on final exam days. You're missing a day.
We don't have a class with you on like computer training class, right? Can we like come to you or we know you if you want?
Okay, next page. For part A, type the equation into Desmos using lowercase x's. If the equation does not have x's, make sure you type in x's.
Does it matter? Like, I can bring like any writing utensils, like the SOL, right?
Because it's on a computer. For part B, zoom in or out to find the x-intercept. So what you put in may not give you your answer. You may have to zoom out to find it. Okay, I'm going to put it in. If no line appears, then you have to put each part of the equation in separately. So put this part in one line, and this part in another line. If you have parallel lines, it's no solution. If they are stacked or one on top of the other, that's infinitely many.
Will we have to graph quadratics into S1?
Possibly.
Is this is like the only one for quadratics, right?
There are 3.
Okay.
Geometry, you have to graph.
I don't know much about. You're talking about for the SOL or the class in general?
Just class.
You will have to graph somewhat, but like quadrilaterals, triangles,
So nothing like
circles,
this.
not quadratics and lines. Lines still, but Kavita.
I saw this certain words like geometry, and then how they have like so many formulas to like.
Say that one more time.
So I saw this person doing like the geometry work, and like I was biology class, and I was like looking at it. So you have to have like so many formulas to do it. Like there's so many ways to do that.
Geometry also has a lot more objectives than we do. So we have 9. They have 13.
And it's taking a whole year.
They haven't even finished their like week. How much is it?
Yeah, they have a lot. Is anyone still writing this down?
No, I'm not.
But you take algebra 2 after geometry, right?
Unless you did not do well in algebra 1/geometry, then you go on to algebra, functions, data, and analysis,
After.
which is like algebra 1.5.
You still have to take algebra 2 and take algebra 1.5?
That depends on what diploma you're trying to go for.
Wait, what does that have to do with the diploma?
Because you need 4 math classes if you're taking advanced, and 3 if you're taking standard.
Wait, guys, I have a question. When you're doing the difference between advanced and standard, like as in the credits.
Guys, stop talking about the credits and what, sorry.
Like for your GPA.
You need more classes for the advanced than you do for the standard. Is all I really know.
And do you need to take an AP class for
I don't know the answer to that, but I think it's based on actual courses, like a set number of math courses, a set number of English courses, things like
You have to do
that.
like 4 years in English, which is most of the classes you do like all 4 years.
Yeah, I need to do the courses.
I don't think it has to be AP, but AP looks better on your transcript. I think I have it somewhere later. I can find it for you.
2 math classes at the same time.
That depends on the math class. For examples, 1 through 4, do we want to see any of those in Desmos? 1, okay. I mean, actually, did you have a different one? 1, okay. Someone read that off me.
8x minus 5.
Parentheses, x plus 2 equals 26.
So as you put this in, nothing shows up. So you have to zoom out, find our line, and that would be our solution. X equals 12.
Well, you can't stand.
Yes. Kavita.
If you were solving for y, then and so numbers like 0 and 1, right?
So for these questions, you're only going to be solving for one variable. If the variable is not x, you would just put x in here. Okay. Other questions? 2, 3, or 4? Yes. Read it off to me, please.
-4 parentheses x plus 3 parentheses. It's kind of dumb. Equals 2 parentheses x minus 3.
Wait.
Should be x equals -1.
Just do this by
This is my chihuahua. No. This is my chihuahua.
Write these down.
Jesus. Or baby.
Have you seen
It's on the same page.
Oh, I see.
For the number.
actually have that written? Would it be
What? X-intercepts equals solutions, which equals zeros, which equals roots. Those are all interchangeable. Don't let those words trip you up. If you get a quadratic, you can type in the expression or equation into Desmos using lowercase x's and then identify the x-intercepts by looking at where does it cross the x-axis. Olivia, open this up, write this up. Wait, what page?
Page 4.
Can I go to the bathroom? Come to you, that's fine.
slash equation?
Is it the quadratic? Quadratic?
Yeah, that.
What do you have?
I'm getting at 100%.
On the side.
For examples number 5, 6, or 7, do we want to see any of those in Desmos? I'm an answer.
I don't even know if you
7.
What's that weird symbol in the middle?
I'm not kidding.
The negative U in it. Yeah.
It's a plus or minus. It's a plus or minus symbol. It's plus and minus, but combined. So you call it plus or minus.
If you get it to be negative,
You'll still go. Yeah.
you should name the plant Muhammad.
That was not one of the two that I was thinking about, but okay.
If you didn't already write this part down, write that down too. The standard form, we've been talking about that. That's your ax squared plus bx plus c.
Is this posted?
On Canvas, yes.
Okay, thank you.
The quadratic formula is not something we talked about, but this would be a different way on how to solve quadratics. You would use this if you were trying to do it algebraically, but couldn't factor.
Oh, wait. What is that? After negative B.
Plus or minus.
This door is the star for the quadratic formula or the standard form for both?
It's like a note. It's for either of these. They have to be solved for 0.
So
That formula is given to you.
How do you solve for 0?
Solve the equation for 0.
Yeah.
CK, what was your question?
what do you mean like you can't use both?
I'll show you an example of where you would use this. 9 for whoever asked for that. We'll do that one algebraically. Kayla, you're going to be after Olivia. So that formula will be given to you on your formula sheet. That's not something you need to remember. That would be if you want to solve it algebraically and it can't be factored, that's where you would use that. So on number 9, we'll do that here in a second. Number 7, I'm going to put into Desmos. Is anyone still writing this down?
I got it. I actually ran it too. Stopping.
Is it the side? What's that?
That was a good one. You can do it, then hopefully you'll have Desmos.
Okay, I'm so I lost out of context and you're about character and Apollo.
Yeah.
Everyone that's talking, make sure you're paying attention. For those of you that asked for number 7, I put this in. You can look where does this cross your x-axis, and those would be your answers.
Would be X.
You can put in the equal 0, it doesn't matter. It would be x equals, and then in curly brackets, negative 16, 2.5, or 5 over 2.
I actually got it right.
Oh, you do curly.
Can you write it down?
Yes.
do as Cypress.
Number 9, we're going to do algebraic. That means I cannot hear anyone's voices as we're doing this. So, for number 9, we would first need to make sure this is solved and solve for 0, or set equal to 0. So I'm going to need to move this to the other side.
What in the world?
Sure? Where?
In this example, so really quickly, I'm going to show you that this cannot be factored, and we would have to solve it using the quadratic formula. If I was trying to factor this, I'd have to multiply 9 and negative 1. So I'd be looking for two numbers that multiply to be negative 9 that add to be 12. There aren't any that work. So we would then use this formula. You were given A, B, and C values, and we're going to put those into all of this.
Never gonna turn all this.
I don't do this, you guys do. So I don't have to do this. So make sure we're paying attention. If you're given A, B, and C values, you're going to put all of these into this. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times our a, that's a parenthesis, times our c, all over 2 times our a value.
How do we know if it's plus or minus?
We'll get there in a second, but it's always plus and minus, but it's a plus or minus symbol.
Is there a thing in there?
You would do it separately, but you wouldn't actually be solving that part, but I'll show you in a second. Hayden?
That's how you.
Hayden?
It's on the formula or
So,
something.
Could you put that in decimals when you get your answer?
You would get a decimal answer, not the answer that's in this.
That's horribly annoying.
Darn.
We're not done with this either.
Oh, that's mine. Why did I start writing it?
So then we have to start simplifying this. Now parts of this you could do in the calculator, like 12 squared, you could put that in your calculator, get 144. Negative 4 times 9 times negative 1 would be a positive 36. And 2 times 9 would be 18.
And then
We could add those two numbers together. 144 plus 36 would be what?
180.
Then we would have to simplify the square root of 180.
Oh,
So think about the highest perfect square that goes into 180.
We have to do
13.
4, 9, 25, or 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 25. Has to be perfect squares.
How'd you get weight?
144 plus 36.
I'm sick.
It's 36.
36.
I did have it right.
5 is like the one that goes inside.
Oh, see, I got confused.
So the square root of 36 is 6. So that would be what comes out. 5 would be left on the inside. Then we could simplify this entire thing because everything can be divided by what? Everything on the outside, the 12, the 6, the 18. What can we divide those all by? 6. So that would be negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 5 over 18. So when you write those as two different answers, negative 2 minus the square root of 18 of 5 over 18, and negative 2 plus the square root of 5 over 18. Not 18. 3.
3.
I'm going to divide.
So the answer is negative 2.
There's 2 answers. There are 2 answers.
Okay.
Gosh,
That is why it's not working.
Listen.
No.
Oh, this
Me
one's
and
in, got it,
like,
okay. Makes sense now.
I'm going
this is not making sense.
I got negative 2. If you put this problem into Desmos, it will give you decimals.
Oh, that's the answer.
Yes, that's the answer.
Oh,
So whatever decimals would want to start, you could do that. But if you're looking for this answer, that wouldn't help you.
So if you did on decimals, you just
You wouldn't be able to convert them. You would have to solve it. Could be that, and then
why we have a negative and positive one because of the symbol that's
because of the plus and minus. Yep. And then Peyton?
you have to put like both minus and minus answers.
Yes.
Sounds really
No.
amazing sarcastic.
Kayla.
I didn't even see what says you.
Kayla? Was your other question? Alright, moving on to the next page.
It's a lot of steps.
Don't feel like you have to write every single word down, but I am going to read through them.
I'm going to write every single word down.
For commutative property of addition, that's the change order of addition. For multiplication is the change order of multiplication. Associative property of addition is the change grouping of addition. And then for multiplication, same thing, change grouping of multiplication. Additive identity is where you add 0. Multiplicative identity is where you multiply by 1. Additive inverse is where you add the opposites. So 3 minus 3 or negative 3 plus 3. Multiplicative inverse is where you multiply by the reciprocal. Does anyone need these 4?
Alright, 1.
We need to know all of these for the estimate.
Most of them you know already. When you solve problems, you do a lot of this without naming these things. They may have questions about properties, but they may not.
I just don't remember this at all.
This was one of the first things we did at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, that's exactly what.
I learned too much.
Anyone still need these first 4?
Oh, yeah.
Like the first 4 ones I just don't
So this would just be 3 plus 4 is the same thing as 4 plus 3. 4 times 3 is the same thing as 3 times 4. This is changing grouping of adding or changing grouping of multiplication.
remember.
So if you have parentheses, just changing how we put those parentheses.
Oh, okay, now
Distributive property, we multiply distributes across addition and subtraction. We do that all the time. Addition property of equality, you add the same to both sides. Subtraction is the same, subtract from both sides. Multiply from both sides. The next one is divide from both sides.
Equality.
Does anyone need up to multiplicative inverse?
There's a whole bunch of where the word problems. What is this? Numbers.
Substitution property of equality is where we simplify or combine like terms, things that we know is substitution. Reflexive is equal to itself, so A equals A, 0 equals 0, those are all reflexive properties. Symmetric property of equality is A equals 4 is the same thing as 4 equals A. It is switching the order of how we wrote that. Anyone need up to multiplication property of equality?
Like Carl's in the building now.
Transitive is if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C.
My hair is starting crying.
So properties are not something you can really do on Desmos. You have to know those.
Wait, what's it? Can you explain?
CK, hold on. Symmetric is if x equals 4 is like your final answer, you could write that as 4 equals x. It's the same thing. CK, what was your question? And then Erica.
The transitive.
So like if I say 2 times 3 equals 6, 5 plus 1 equals 6, 2 times 3 equals 5 plus 1. They both equal the same thing. Erica. She just got you. Okay, so for this one, you have to use the table with all the steps given to answer numbers 10 through 15. Does anyone need to see answers to any of those?
Are the answers posted?
Mm-hmm.
Can you come with
15? So for 15, which property describes the set between 8 and 9? What did they do?
It's so hot in here.
I'm freezing.
I'm hot.
You could say that they divided both sides by 1.
Division property.
I would say division property of equality, they divided both sides by 1.
Oh, I thought it was
You could multiply both sides by 1, but technically, since they're already multiplying, we would say division. So division property of equality would be 15.
Wait, so when it says from like each step to each step, like which step, like
So
What is post?
property of equality. 7, 8, 7, 9, you're looking from this to this, what happens?
okay, and then I will look from like number 10 from like given to step 1.
Okay. On the next page,
Your name, right?
for little equations, this is something we just talked about. When there's more than one letter, you must solve by hand. Now, the Desmos Hack where you type in the variables, that could work, but that would just tell you that they're the same or they're equal to. I don't think it would really help you with this. But for number 16 or 17, do we want to see either of those? 16. So solve by hand is what they said. For number 16, if we're trying to solve for b, we can get rid of the 1/2 first by multiplying both sides by 2.
More than you.
We have 2a equals b8. How would we get b by itself? Divide by h. So 2a over h equals b. Most of your literal equations will be either simpler ones that you could solve by hand easily or multiple choice.
With number 17 x over y. Because
You're solving for b. Oh wait, hold on, because the answer they have here is wrong. To be c minus ax all over y. So if you look at that answer keys, the answer is wrong. They're on Canvas, so you can go back in your free time and look at that. For the systems part A is graph the two equations, look for a point of intersection. For part B, if the lines are parallel, that's no solution. If the lines are stacked, that's infinitely many. So you do not have to solve any systems problems by elimination or substitution. You can do them all by graphing. Including any systems word problems. You can do them all by graphing.
What do you mean lines are stacked if they're all crossing each
Stacked would be on top of each other.
other?
If they're crossing, that's a point of intersection, so they have one solution.
Wait, so like, are they like, are the lines like dashed?
Not for this. That would be for inequalities.
Like greater than equal to.
Yeah, a lot of these hacks are the same for things. Do we have questions I want to see 18, 19, or 20 in Desmos? Sure. Anyone still writing this down? For 18, if I put both of those in, I'm going to type them in exactly as they're written. So y equals negative 5x minus 2 and 10x plus 2y equals negative 4. In this case, I would say zoom out to make sure you're not missing the other line. So they're stacked, and I don't know if you'll have this functionality on your test, but you can go into the gear wheel, change this to make it a dotted to see if they are in fact stacked. Infinitely many solutions.
Okay, is Desmos Hack look like exactly the same?
I don't know what that was.
How did you get emojis on your?
I don't know how I just did that. I typed in test and it did that.
If you solve it like algebraically, don't you get like a single equation?
This is all very lot of science.
Is that the one that algebra test?
Oh my gosh.
It just shows the basic stuff.
Green. I used this for my SOL last year.
So what is it not?
I don't know that. For the most part, it shows everything.
Does it do this? Does it do the
Tables? Okay.
not the table, the slider thing?
John, as soon as everything gets back to me. For the bottom questions that are all word problems, do we want to go over any of those?
23.
We could do 23. Does the systems one?
$.
So with these, you can still use Desmos, but you do have to be able to set up the equations first. So if you have word problems that have 6 numbers or 4 numbers, 6 numbers is definitely systems. 4 numbers is either systems or is direct and variation, but it would say something about direct and variation. If it doesn't say that, then it's systems. So in this case, concert tickets cost 20, in advance it cost 25. There were 784 total tickets and $17,830 made.
Rich.
Remember that if it has money, all the money goes together. So we can say 20x plus 25y equals 17,830. All the money goes together. And then we know our other total is 784. What do you think we'll be adding together? X and Y. Because we're looking for the number of each ticket or each type of ticket sold. So then you could put both of these equations into Desmos and find your intersection point. Word problems will not have a no solutions or infinitely many solution option. What was that number? 17.
8.
X plus Y equals 7.
Oh, that
These are big numbers, so you'll have to zoom out and find these ones. So 354 and 430 would be our two answers. 354 is our X value. So that would be concert tickets in advance. And then what was that number? 430?
Yes.
Yes.
Does money always have to go together?
Yeah, so money always goes together. If it said number of tickets, and then 74, those three things would go together. Whatever looks the same would go together. For 22, we're doing some half of coin collection, so half is important. But 10 more is important. She now has 45, and we're looking for how many to begin with. I don't remember if that's the exact sentence, but. So X is our, how many did she have to begin with? That's what we don't know. If she sold half of that amount, we're going to multiply 1/2 and X. Yeah. 10 more, how would we write that? Plus 10. And she now has 45, so that's going to be our total. We we can put that equation into Desmos and figure out what that answer is. You could also solve it by hand, either or. $70. So 70 coins would be our answer. Yep. Yeah. To be done.
If you have like a bracket to write an answer, do we have to include points?
In this one, that is a solution, but this is just one solution, so we don't need brackets for this.
Flip flop one.
Why do you do fractions on division?
It's not hard to say. Just like that. It's just like this. Percent like this. Yeah.
The next page is on solving inequalities. For A, type the inequality using lowercase x's. B, the solutions will be in the shaded region. Remember that solutions can be on solid lines but not dotted lines. And then in this table below it says what these each are. Less than is x is less than whatever number. In interval notation, that would be negative infinity to that number, both with parentheses. Greater than would be x is greater than that number. In parentheses, it would be that number then infinity.
Yes. Yes, you did.
Were you asleep?
Anyone need this part up here? Less than or equal to would be x is less than or equal to that number. Then negative infinity with parentheses to whatever number with a square bracket. And then greater than or equal to would be x is greater than or equal to that number with a square bracket, that number to infinity with a parentheses. Does anyone need A? Or B?
We go back up to A.
Solutions.
Forgot about it.
Snake. Round round.
Infinity signs are horrendous. Region. I can't spell. I just put an H in greater than region. Stop, don't jinx it, please. Remove my struggle.
For numbers 1 through 4 is asking you to find the interval in inequality notation and graph it. Remember that anytime it has an equal to line, that's a closed circle. If it doesn't, it's an open circle. Do we want to see any of these in Desmos? Which one? 4. I heard 4, right? And then the first one. And then Bella, say that again.
Shouldn't the negative infinity be like the square number?
Infinity and negative infinity are never square brackets. Sorry, did anyone still need that?
Yeah, just. Number 13.
My infinity signs are at
You just need to go on 8 and sideways.
Bella's going, so when Bella
Sideways.
yeah, but mine are at a 45-degree angle because I cannot Right.
For the first one, if I type this in, 9x plus 14 is greater than or equal to negative 22. I can look at this, it will be shaded for me, and I can say this is everything greater than or equal to, because it's a solid line, negative 4. So that would be your inequality notation. Your interval notation would be negative 4 with a square bracket to infinity. And then when you draw it, it would be a closed circle at negative 4 going through it. For number 4,
Just do extractions.
Wait, what's the inequality notation again?
x is greater than or equal to negative 4. For number 4, for this is everything less than or equal to negative 6. So your interval notation would be negative infinity to negative 6 with a square bracket. And that would be a closed circle going to the left. On the next page, these properties are the same as the inequal or as the equation ones, except for the very last one. So I'm not going to go back over those. You can go back and rewrite those again. I'm not doing that right now. For the very last one, the transitive property of inequality. If A is less than B and B is less than C, then A is less than C.
Wait, what? My brother's trying to.
Okay, hold on. I gotta write that down. What to do?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Wait, is this the same thing?
It's like saying.
Everything else is the same except for the very last one.
Is less than 3, which means that 1 is less than
Yeah.
I'm so hungry.
This one also has a table with given steps. Do we want to see any of the answers 5 through 10?
The whole thing, 956. Oh my god. Really quickly.
The next page is going to be the last one we write down for today. So for linear inequalities, for less than, that should be a dotted line shaded below. Greater than is a dotted line shaded above. Greater than or equal to, solid line shaded above. And less than or equal to, solid line shaded below. And remember that your solutions are in the shaded region or on a solid line.
David. That's what shit you did. Is that an R?
Where?
A war. That kind of sounds like a beer. A war.
Okay. For 11 or 12, do we want to see either of those in Desmos? Or 13 through 15, do we want to do any of those?
Wait, so for work problems, do we have to have that graph? Since we're having like the graphing paper.
They, I believe, should have graphing paper. I would say double check it in Desmos, even if you graph it by hand.
I don't.
Wait, do they require you to show work?
No, but anything you write down, you're gonna be turning that in. I don't think they do anything with it.
You like shred it or something.
Yeah.
But
I
then it
think
goes up to the higher
they will
first because Miss Rita chose like, oh yeah,
What kind of
inappropriate stuff, like.
Alright, so on Wednesday, I need you all really focused so that way we can finish this, we can go over any last minute questions we have, and hopefully you'll have time to practice before your SOL.